That is, God, who exists eternally, gave God's self to us completely and totally. That is a picture of love and self-sacrifice and utter selfless giving. That's what we mean when we use the word kenosis. Now, there is another word for the kinds of relationships that we have when we pour ourselves out for another person. And that relationship is a relationship of equality. And that word is interdependence. And it turns out that relationships that are interdependent is another important factor in human resilience. And so, like Christ, we ought to be searching for opportunities for us to be in relationship with God and with each other in ways where we pour ourselves out equally for another person out of divine love, out of self-sacrifice and service, knowing full well that that other person will pour themselves out for us as well. That's what keeps those kinds of relationships, by the way, from not being codependent. Codependent, unhealthy, toxic relationships are relationships that are unequal, where you are pouring yourself out over and over and over again for another person, but they don't reciprocate. You are caring for them and seeing to their needs, but they are not caring for you and seeing to your needs. And those unequal powered relationships become toxic and abusive and hurtful precisely because they are unequal. And when those relationships become deeply pathological, the person who's doing the caring becomes just as dependent as the person who is receiving the care. Let me be as clear as I can, that is not what we are talking about here. What we're talking about are deep and rich and healthy, loving relationships, like the relationship that we see modeled in this Trinitarian picture of God. This Trinitarian relationship between the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit, where they are existing in divine union at all times, forever giving and receiving and caring and loving and pouring each other out for the others in self-sacrifice. That relationship of eternal divine giving is the relationship that Jesus invites us into and that Jesus says we ought to immerse other people in. It's a relationship of beauty and generosity and health and maturity. And it's the best kind of relationship that we can find ourselves in any stage of our lives. You know, the 13th century mystic monk Meister Eckhart said this about this kind of relationship. He says, it's good when God pours his self into man, but it's better when God becomes fruitful in man, because fruitfulness is the only gratitude for the gift. Now, here's what Meister Eckhart, I think, meant when he said that. There's a lot going on in that sentiment, but the most important thing to my mind that Meister Eckhart is revealing to us there is that when we enter into these kinds of divine, loving, self-giving, interdependent relationships, we don't just receive the gift of love, but that gift of love, once we receive it from God, is multiplied in us so that we are abundantly full of goodness and love and joy to give back to other people. That multiplication, that fruitfulness, that magnification of love is what gives us the strength to be resilient no matter what happens in our lives, no matter what our circumstances might be. Now, all of that is really just a kind of fancy, mystical, theological way of saying something that I think we all know to be true already. And that is simply this, that when we are in relationships of genuine, authentic, self-giving love, we are better and stronger together than we are when we are